All right, thank you, Muremi Mwangi, for that. It's time for a discussion here on Checkpoint tonight. Remember, you can participate. Our hashtag is Checkpoint. That will allow us to track your thoughts. You can ask your questions or even just what you make of the various topics we'll be discussing tonight. And joining me for the show this evening, I have on my immediate right, James Mamboleo. He's an advocate. So is Willis Otieno. Asante sana. Daisy Amdani is a women rights activist as well as a political commentator. So happy to have you all with us tonight. And I want us to start with that report by Muremi Mwangi and the concerns around an analysis of Raila Odinga and these 4 now trips he has taken out of the country, been seen to represent the president following the handshake. Daisy, what do you make of that? And of course, you can hear some of the comments from the politicians on both political divides.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what to make of it. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga is an internationally renowned statesman. He's a former prime minister of our country. And we have seen on several occasions, he has been out there, speaking on behalf of country. And I think that we need to begin to value our leaders more and not read too much politics into it. He has built an international reputation, international relations over the years. And if those international relations can be brought to bear for the benefit of the country, I think we mustn't read too much in it and appreciate that we have that kind of a citizen who is willing to go out there. I think, of course, it's a bit worrying that we seem to be in full campaign mode, and that is what is making people read ulterior motives
on this,
so that they see like it is somebody being shortchanged.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything that stops the deputy president from also making his forays into the international arena.
All right, as we continue, just this breaking news you're seeing there on your screen, the reports we are getting into our newsroom this evening and this hour is that Orwa Boys is on fire. Of course, the cause of the fire is yet to be ascertained, but we will be giving you more details as we get them. Orwa Boys on fire. And remember, we're just one of the topics we'll be discussing today. Oriwa, beg your pardon, boys. One of the topics we'll be discussing today is the cases of unrest in schools. And we've seen about a dozen dormitories that have been torched in just the recent past, the past 1 week or 2 weeks, if you like. So this another incident, of course, we'll wait to hear what this is about. Investigations and fire. We understand engines are at the school to put out the fire. We'll be giving you more details as we get them. All right, Willis, this is not just Raila Odinga's former prime minister. He's meeting, in this particular trip, India prime minister. It is just not any day a former prime minister goes and gets that kind of treatment. So there appears to be very deliberate positioning is what some insiders are reading on the different camps, and that you look at the heads of summit meeting, there was AU, and the deputy president did not attend. The president chose to send his CS, Foreign Affairs, so that people are reading this visits by Raila Odinga vis-a-vis what we're also seeing play out the relationship between the president and his deputy.
But let me say this. Number one, Prime Minister Odinga is the most valuable international asset that we as a country have. And this is a reputation that he has built over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. If you go back into history, if we take the visit to India, you'll find that Prime Minister Odinga was interacting with Prime Minister Modi way back, even before he became Prime Minister in India.
Right.
And it's across the board. Go to South Africa, build relations with Ramaphosa way before he even became president in South Africa. So this is a leader who has cut a niche across the world, nurtured relations with world leaders or opinion shapers, even before they assume their present positions. So that it is what I can call a national asset that should be highly treasured and deployed diplomatically across the globe to help advance Kenya's foreign or international interests, as and when need be. So that, as Daisy says rightfully, it will be very unfortunate if we try to reduce it to local competitions and local politics that it's Jubilee or you're trying to undermine me for this. So that even if a person was not to be undermined, if you are to deploy some of the leaders that we have, I'm sorry to say this, but their pedigree or the caliber of interaction they may have at the international level, at this point may still be so humble. So why should we as a country wait for leaders to build their international pedigrees, then deploy them when you already have an asset that has created that kind of traction internationally?
All right.
So that, and when you look at it in terms of the direct question you asked about the AU Heads of State Summit. Number one, that's a Heads of State Summit. As the name suggests, it's for heads of states and heads of government. And at the moment, we only have one head of state in Kenya. And
but he has a principal assistant.
And when he so desires that he's not available, or when he's unavailable for a particular assignment, as the head of state, he has an obligation to determine who represents this country in certain meetings, and even the nature of commitments that can be made for and on behalf of the Republic of Kenya.
Right.
And these are normal. You didn't know, because what we were told is who was not sent, but we've not been told what assignment was given to that principal assistant that made him not available for the head of state summit.
Okay.
So that it is us Kenyans who read too much politics.
Too much into
when
it.
sometimes it's not even necessary.
Mamboleo, your thoughts?
Of course, I agree with my colleagues here only to a point. The fact is Raila Odinga is a gentleman who has built his reputation in politics over a long period of time. There is, of course, no doubt that he has quite a huge network, both regionally and internationally. But what I see right now happening is vintage Raila Odinga coming out.
Okay.
Raila Odinga ran in the last presidential election to a loss. And prior to the second presidential election, Raila Odinga came out as a very aggressive politician. And a lot of people, even the international community, started getting worried about his tactics in politics. So what I see is vintage Raila Odinga trying a different tact, which is basically rebranding. I have absolutely no doubt that the question whether he will run for president in 2022 is something that is very top on his mind. But he needs to get himself from that aggressive, ever-revolting Raila Odinga that he's always been to a more statesman-like person. And I think for him, the handshake and the bridging or the bridges initiative has building bridges initiative has given him that opportunity to once again come out. You see, he's been on a charm offensive, spoken to some of the prominent leaders in this country to try and show them, I'm not as bad as you guys think. And I am sure, my colleagues might not agree, I am sure he's an asset to this country, and I'm sure he's doing good diplomacy for this country at this particular point in time. But I'm also sure that that is not without a connection to the 2022 presidential bid.
Let me just say this. Why is it that we've just had an election, barely 8 months away? Why are we so fascinated with 2022? We must live our lives today. And why we're going to an election was so that you have an opportunity to implement the policies of that political party or the coalition of political parties that succeeds that election.
So they should
we live it today.
They should what?
We should now focus.
Campaigns as opposed
because
to...
it's as if, I find it so unfortunate. We are behaving as if there is no president, or if we have one, he's actually not even in office. Why are we so fast at 2022? What we should be focusing on right now is interrogating what Jubilee is doing to this country.
Okay.
Today is Standard, and I must give them credit, a very excellent article on the SGR. So that those are the issues we should be asking ourselves. The impact of Jubilee's policies on the people of Kenya.
On the lives of
so that if you tell us that we focus on 2022,
then
that time will come, we will not leave. We'll again be telling us now, let's focus on 2027.
Daisy, let me come to you. He mentioned the Building Bridges initiative, and there's concern in some quarters at the pace in which things are moving. They were gazetted. It's been about now 4 or 5 months, but they're yet to be launched. We've heard about the areas they are set to look into. in as far as the challenges facing the countries and come up with proposals. But for you, are you convinced this is a team that, you know, find whatever way they choose to go about their mandate, will come out with the solutions that Kenya needs to the challenges she faces?
Well, I think it is worrying the pace at which they are working, because there's been basic silence, you know, since the unveiling of the team and their gazettement. And it is cause for concern, because if you recall, in 2007, after the post-election violence and after the leaders had basically settled their political scores and settled the positions among them, there are very many issues on that agenda 4, the Kenya National and Reconciliation Dialogue of that time, that were left unattended. Okay, some of those issues are now part of what the Building Bridges initiative is seeking to address. And we see now where there's more or less a political calm, the political protagonists are settled in their roles. And so there is no sense of urgency for us to address those underlying issues. And I think that is a cause for concern. But let me also say this, that I want to appreciate what the religious leaders have done to sort of like jumpstart the initiative and hurry things along. Just last week, they unveiled the National Dialogue framework, a framework for national dialogue, and they're encouraging the leaders to move issues along. They've set a delegates conference for discussion. It is important for Kenyans to talk. We have very many unresolved issues. The fact that we have a semblance of peace doesn't mean that we have peace. We still have a lot of underlying tensions. We have a lot of issues that have yet to be resolved, that must be addressed, and they must be addressed before 2022 comes along. And so I think that it is irresponsible for our political leaders to continue to keep silent when the potential for this country to literally break apart remains unattended to. And I hope that they will support the religious leaders in the National Dialogue framework, and that they will encourage Kenyans to speak about the underlying issues. Also, for the president keeps talking about a legacy. He talks about the big 4. Unless we address the underlying issues as identified under the Building Bridges initiative, and likewise, identified under the dialogue framework by the religious leaders, the big 4 is not going to be successfully implemented. So if there is one legacy that President Uhuru Kenyatta can leave for this country, as he said that he wants to leave Kenya a better place than he found it, the one thing that he needs to do is get quick on resolving the issues that they identified under the Building Bridges initiative, and allow for Kenyans to start talking. It is important that Kenyans start talking. They talked about a national dialogue. They talked about county dialogues. The religious leaders have framed their initiative along the same lines. Let them work together, and we begin to move this country forward. And moving the country forward is not big 4. It's not, saying that, talking about 2022. It is about addressing the immediate threats right now to our economy, to our cohesion, addressing the issues of inclusivity, addressing issues of productivity. Yes, we have seen the president go around the world encouraging foreign direct investment, encouraging people to invest in Kenya. We need to see more initiatives back here at home, addressing the economic challenges that Kenyans are facing. We need to address the budget, 2018-2019 budget, the finance bill, and what it means for Kenyans. So the president really needs to take this a bit more seriously. We need to see him move his team and work together with the religious leaders. Right.
Willis, I want us to switch gears. We've just broken that story about a fire in Rio boys, and we have been reporting this past week quite a number of cases of unrest. We don't know what this is about. We will establish and report on the same. But every other year, we keep having these incidences. You have perhaps a team going out to probe the issues. They'll come up with a report, and largely the recommendations relate, and yet we still keep seeing the same thing happen. What does that speak to?
To me, it speaks to impunity and lack of seriousness. Impunity in the sense that you can't be having the same problem every year And then you set up task forces, you set up committees, you set up inquiries, and you don't implement their recommendations. We actually may be stupid, if I may use that term, in the sense that next year, we are in July this year, next year probably in June, July, we'll be having more schools on fire. The year after that, the same things. We are not serious about, we've not gone to, or the policy leaders, let me not even say we, let me say the policy leaders in that sector have not addressed to me what are some of the core issues that are leading to this unrest. Because if you look at it right now, it's like a wave spreading through schools. It's not one isolated case that you can isolate and then deal with what the issue is.
Yeah.
It seems to be a systemic issue that these school kids are raising, and it permeates through several schools. I'm even sad to say that even as we sit here, you've just had breaking news, more, another school is on fire. And I don't know what will happen next morning. You may find 2 more again will be on fire. So it is time, in my view, that policy leaders in the education sector proactively and genuinely interrogate what are some of the causes of these student unrests and deal with them.
When you say interrogate, they claim to be doing so when they commission these teams to go probe. So, but they just keep doing it.
We are beyond, as I've said, we are beyond probes. This is not even a question of setting up a new task force, sending a fact-finding mission. You don't need that.
Yeah.
You already have done that previously. Actually, for the last 10 years, you have probably 10 reports.
Correct.
Now, don't give us an 11th report by sending another fact-finding mission. Just go into those reports and find out what are the core issues that are causing this unrest and implement. Now tell us, we are implementing the following measures. And there should not be measures that are what I call knee-jerk. That you wake up and say, there'll be no visiting days in schools, there'll be no holiday tuition. Are those informed by what the probe committees found, or these are just, like where I sit, I can't just say right now that this is the problem, this is the solution. Go into the team's reports and find out what did they find as some of the underlying issues that caused this.
Yeah.
And if you look at it where I say this exists, you'll find that these things largely affect public schools. Private schools are not largely affected, almost negligible if you go just look at the dichotomy of the unrest. Public schools are most affected, private schools almost negligible. So I do believe that it's a management issue somewhere.
Okay.
That if I was to look at those reports, you'll be able to find out what is this that is causing all of this.
And Mamboleo, clearly then, if it's a management issue, if you agree with Otieno, then it's over the years with different administrations, different heads of this ministry.
It is not necessarily a management question only. I think it's a multiplicity of problems that are at the cause of the unrest that you see in schools. In fact, the Ministry of Education conducted a survey. They appointed a task force which released its findings just the other day. And they're saying that the second term unrest that you're seeing in most schools arises out of a phobia for exams. Now, I want to think that could be one of the problems, but it is one problem amongst many. Now, this is what I think is the problem, because you don't see unrest only in schools. In this country, you are seeing unrest everywhere. Leaders are leading rebellion against each other across the country in every field, in the religious, social, and political sectors, left, right, and center every day. I think there is something that is problematic with the entire socio-economic political fabric of this country. And where my colleague suggests dialogue and conversation, I think this is where it comes in extremely importantly. I think that we need as a country to get into a very serious discussion, and this conversation should be continuous. For instance, I see that this is an opportunity in which we should insist to every parent, every guardian, to every school manager, to every BOM, Board of Management, to every teacher, to every student, that long gone are those days when you used to take students as these small kids who will have to listen to what you say without question. I think the spirit of democratization that we keep pushing for out here needs to permeate into our school system so that we have teachers sitting with students and having very constructive conversation on how these students also want the education system to go.
As well, yeah.
It doesn't mean that teachers should lose that opportunity to be perfect and mold students, but they should also give time, opportunity to some of these kids to tell them how they feel about the entire education process. Because a lot of this rebellion could be because most of the kids keep claiming that they are not understood, that their needs are not being met. Now, if you look at the education system and the fast train that has become the modern living system, parents on the one hand have absolutely no time with their children, and they take these children to school hoping that the schools are going to take care of them. But there will always be that gap that of the role that parents are supposed to play. So what I think is the churches, you know, the boards of management, the schools who interact with students on a day-to-day basis, their parents, all need to have one conversation in which from point to the other, every of these stakeholders knows exactly what the kids need and that they are playing the role that they should in society, so that at the end of the day, some of these things are prevented before they happen. Because in most cases, if you look at some of the things that these kids are talking about, they are extremely mundane. There are things that actually can be managed if there's a conversation.
You're watching Checkpoint. We want to take a quick break. When we return, we'll also talk about that sugar probe report by a joint committee of parliament. It was criticized as shoddy. They were given 10 more days to try and answer the question, is the sugar in the market safe? So we'll talk about that and much more. Please stay with us.